구원해준 나의 천사 나의 세상 난 이상 새 고향이 널 만나러
The wedding was grand, a spectacle whispered across the internet. Three brothers marrying three sisters on the same day, at the same hour. It sounded like a legend written in gold. Yet the ceremony passed quietly, almost hushed against its own glory. Two couples glowed in their happiness, already settling into love's embrace. But the youngest pair, Jimin and Wyan, stood in hesitation, still trying to process the weight of vows suddenly binding them together. Their story began not with fire but with silence. Jimin and Wyan were the youngest siblings. Their fate decided long before. Parents had stitched the union years ago, weaving dreams of family ties. Wyan accepted it, heart willing. She had heard enough about Jimin to believe he was a man worth loving. She had not known him closely, not beyond fragments from relatives and faint stories that placed him in everyone's good books. And in one fleeting gesture, during their first family gathering, he held her during a photograph as though he truly cherished her. But Jimin's heart was not aligned with hers. He had agreed to marriage not with desire but with surrender, cornered by duty and word. After that day, he disappeared into distance, not even appearing to choose the very clothes for his wedding. Wayan waited, and each absence hollowed her hope. She hated the feeling of yearning alone, hated the thought of pouring affection into a bond that Jimin would never open himself to. A love so one sided already ached before it began. After the vows and blessings, the newlyweds gathered to eat. The older sisters laughed and whispered together, their joy spilling like bright wine across the table. Yet Wayan, even on this day of union, felt the familiar shadow of loneliness settle on her. They never meant to, yet they excluded her with ease. Conversation moved around her like a stream that never touched her shore. When she tried to step in, her words were brushed aside, faint as if they carried no weight. Unni, I think this will suit you. Wayan said softly, holding up a delicate dress she had chosen with care. Her sisters exchanged a glance, lips tucking into quiet amusement before one replied, I think it will suit you, and just like that turned away. She wondered often if she truly belonged. Their affection flickered only when she was unwell, when worry made them draw near. But once their mood shifted, the tenderness vanished, leaving her adrift again, unsure of her place, her worth, her presence among them. Now she sat beside Jimin, her husband, the untouched weight of marriage pressing against her shoulders. She lifted a spoonful of food, and that tasted nothing. Even here, she thought bitterly, loneliness had followed her into the very heart of her wedding. Jimin lifted his gaze from his plate, noticing how Wyan traced circles with a spoon instead of eating. Her thoughts seemed far away, almost unreachable. Breaking the silence, he asked gently, Do you not like it? His words startled her into looking up. Huh? Wayan blinked, caught off guard, her eyes wide. The food, he clarified, his tone steady yet curious. Do you not like it? Her head shook quickly. No, I mean, yes, it is good. She lowered her gaze again, trying to mask the hollowness in her chest. But you're not eating, Jimin observed, his eyes lingering on her untouched plate as though it revealed more than words could. Just too tired to even eat. She murmured, her voice barely more than a sigh. He nodded, then offered softly, we can get some drinks for you on the way home. Her head lifted slightly at his words, her eyes searching his face for some anchor in this uncertainty. Where are we going? Owen asked, her tone hesitant, almost cautious. They did not tell you? Jimin paused, surprise flickering across his face, before she shook her head. We are going to our new apartment, he explained, voice calm and measured. Vaya nodded, though annoyance prickled at her heart. No one had told her this, not even her own family. Still, a faint relief warmed her that Jimin was at least trying to speak. It is next to your sisters and my brothers, Jimin added, the words settling heavy between them. Her throat tightened as she gulped. The thought of cutting sharper than she expected. Oh, was all she managed, her gaze falling to her plate again in silence. Jimin studied her for a moment, wondering why she seemed unaware of such important details. Meanwhile, Wayan's mind raced. Living next door meant she would have to witness her sister's joy every day, while her own marriage began with uncertainty and aching distance. The room was quiet, filled with the faint rustle of clothes being changed and the soft hum of evening settling in. Ryan sat on the bed, her gaze drifting toward Jimin as he placed his phone to charge before walking toward her. Can we talk? Jimin asked, his voice careful, almost testing the space between them. Ryan's heart leapt, though she masked it quickly. She had longed for this moment, his willingness to speak. As she answered instantly, relief in her tone. Clearing his throat, Jimin sat beside her on the bed, their shoulders separated by the smallest breath of distance. You know, this whole thing, maybe they knew it way before us. I mean, our parents, he said softly, eyes lifting toward her. Ryan nodded as he spoke, listening carefully. I know you're not ready either, Jimin continued, but she shook her head firmly. His eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise that softened into something almost childlike, almost vulnerable, like puppy eyes she could not resist. I was happy to marry you, Ryan said, her voice steady, carrying both honesty and tenderness. I still am. The words hung in the air, and Jimin swallowed her, his throat tightening as he looked at her, startled by the certainty in her tone. Really? He asked, as though afraid to believe. Ryan nodded again, her affirmation quiet but unwavering. She had never meant anything more. Jimin let the truth settle in him, and he breathed out slowly, almost carefully. Then I will try to, he said, his voice low, unsure yet promising. But Ryan shook her head gently, her lips curving into the faintest smile. Just me yourself, I would like it, she replied, and Jimin's gaze lingered before he nodded. They talked that night about everything and nothing. Small fragments of themselves scattered into the air like stars filled the silence that once stood between them. How easy it suddenly felt to share words with the person who would hold your future. A few days into the marriage, Jimin and Ryan stepped out together for dinner. The restaurant's warm lights glowed softly, casting a calm elegance across the table. Ryan scanned the menu with quiet focus while Jimin had already ordered himself a drink, sipping slowly. Will you be ready to work in a week? He asked, his voice casual yet steady. Ryan looked up in surprise, blinking at him. Of course, she answered without hesitation, the words spilling naturally as though she had been waiting for this. Next to my cabin, Jimin added, and her eyes widened further. Really? She asked, display flazed with a faint spark of excitement. Jimin nodded. If I had known we had the same major, you would already be working like you asked. Ryan reached over, picking up his glass and taking a curious sip. It is so nice, she murmured, her eyes brightening as she studied the drink. Can I order another one? Jimin asked quickly. She shook her head and returned the glass to him. But Jimin was already signaling for another, quietly amused by her reaction. Their food soon arrived, the plates set neatly between them. As they began to eat, the conversation flowed lightly, the air filled with the unspoken comfort of shared beginnings. Evening settled gently as Jimin and Ryan returned from work. Slipping into the comfort of home, he changed quickly into soft pajamas while she was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, preparing dinner. The rhythm of daily life began to bloom between them. By the time Jimin entered, Ryan was already slicing vegetables with steady hands. He moved beside her, preparing a warm drink for both of them. You were already their favorite, he said lightly, a quiet smile playing across his lips as he glanced at her. Do not lie. Wayan giggled, though she knew it was true. Her team had already taken her out, laughing easily with her. Jimin had nudged her earlier, reminding her not to forget her husband while enjoying her colleague's company. Since you like it spicy, she murmured, stirring more red pepper paste into the pan. The aroma thickened in the air, rich and sharp. Jimin's smile deepened, warmth glowing in his eyes as he slipped an arm around her shoulder. Wayan's lips curved, happiness quiet but certain. We can go out this weekend, Jimin said as he leaned back. Wayan nodded softly. Yeah, I was thinking about a place. Where? He asked, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Just then the doorbell rang, cutting their moment short. I'll get it, Jimin said. He opened the door to see Wayan's sisters, smiling brightly, his brothers standing just behind them. Hi, they chimed in unison. Oh, welcome, Jimin greeted, warmly stepping aside to let them in. The living room filled quickly with chatter as they all settled to the couch. Wayan returned from the kitchen, wiping her hands. Did we scare you, coming without notice? One sister asked. No, we are fine. We were making dinner, Jimin replied. He patted the seat beside him, and Wayan sat down quietly. All six now sat together, laughter weaving through the room. Cooking together? Not bad, another sister teased, glancing toward her husband. Why are you looking at me? Jimin's brother asked, earning a dismissive shake of her head. Turning back to Wayan, her sister pressed. Why did you not come see us? We called you for shopping, right? Wayan blinked, heart sinking. She knew what that meant. Watching them shop, being their silent target. Before she could speak, Jimin answered firmly. We actually had an official outing with our team on the same day. He explained, steady and calm. Relief washed over our yen. He had saved her. The sisters nodded, then one smirked. Oh, yeah, the job you got for her, right? Jimin blinked, frowning.